Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman issue 22 by Joshua Williamson, Dan Mora and Alejandro Sanchez. Superman's battle with Doomsday takes an unexpected turn when the Aftermath, a group of alien beings, or survivors of Doomsday's past rampages, turns up in orbit of Metropolis and demands the creature be given to them or the city and Superman will suffer. Now the Aftermath and its ties to the Hunter-Prey storyline from the 90s are certainly something I didn't expect to see in a modern Superman comics, since they are so of their time in that early 90s. They exude 90s. It's from a period of time where no one actually references, in my opinion, these type of stories, since no one really cares about Hunter-Prey. It wasn't a very good storyline back when I read it, and I don't think a lot of people have very good memories of it because really it was just cashing in on that Doomsday craze post-death and return of Superman. They wanted to keep using Doomsday despite him dying, so they brought him back and then Superman had to fight him again. It was a whole thing and it just reeked of cash grab. After boarding the ship, Superman recognizes that the ship is from Calaton, the world from that Hunter-Prey book that Doomsday destroyed, and he kept the promise he made to Radiant and the people of the planet that Doomsday would be stopped, and he did stop him for a time. But like we've been seeing over the past few issues, Doomsday just cannot be completely stopped, but he can be halted temporarily. And before he wakes from his Black Mercy-induced coma, the Aftermath offers to take Doomsday away from Earth. The Aftermath is quite an interesting character, and I love how Williamson uses Clark and Lois's reporting skills to hand out a few little details about the being. Like when Superman and Superwoman first appear on the ship, they start kind of analyzing this guy, like, who is he? What is he? And we get to learn some things like maybe they are undead, since Superman can't hear a heartbeat or any sort of like life signs in the being, so it stands to reason that these people are dead. It makes sense as well if they're like the undead, like vengeful spirits that are after Doomsday for what he has done to their world. And we also learn that he is quick to anger and then quick to calm himself down, kind of hinting at there's some sort of mental trauma affecting them, and rightly so. Their entire planet was decimated by Doomsday. The beings taking Doomsday though is interesting, since it's implied that they don't want to contain him fully, they want to use the creature for something. And this kind of goes into what Superman kind of realizes, in that he's never actually found out what Doomsday was specifically created for. He knows he was created as like the ultimate weapon, but he doesn't know what for. And this kind of implies that maybe the Aftermath know what for. And this has kind of been something that's been hinted at with, you know, the time trapper stuff, that Doomsday was created for specifically something, and we've seen hints that that's something sort of bubbling in the background of this book from time to time, that there is something coming. And I'm wondering if it's because of this reason that Doomsday was created. I'm sure Williamson has like an end game for this Doomsday storyline, and I'm intrigued to see what that is, because it is really interesting that, yeah, we don't particularly know the full reason why Doomsday was created besides being the ultimate weapon. Thanks to Lois's investigative reporting skills, she can tell the Aftermath is not being fully truthful with them and leaving out little bits of crucial information. And after realizing that his game is up and he's not going to get what he wants his way, the Aftermath transforms, revealing themselves to be the Radiant, a being of pure energy who was created to kill Doomsday back during Hunter-Prey. I had a feeling Radiant would make an appearance, and so far Williamson is using the elements from that Less Than Stellar story to craft something quite interesting and exciting. He's giving these characters who are just kind of there to placate like a Superman Doomsday rematch some depth and some actual characterization. Radiant doesn't hang around too long, leaving his soldiers to fight Superman and Superwoman while he races to Supercorp to take Doomsday's body back forcefully. Supergirl luckily is standing guard as Lena works on a mobile containment unit for Doomsday so they can transport him away from the city and from the people. There is this great little moment here between Mercy and Lex where we have this budding romance building in the back pages of this book and some specials, and people begin to kind of notice that when Mercy ends up calling Lex Lexi, little, you know, cute little name for him. And it was recently announced that the evil Lex is kind of making a comeback very soon, mostly because of movie synergy, and I think that's a real shame, since we've only gotten little bits and pieces of this memoryless Lex who clearly wants to do a lot better than his previous incarnation. He actually wants to help people, and we've only seen little bits throughout this book in just like little off-panel stuff that we get hinted at, and like little scenes like in the last couple of issues where he was saving people, but never really got enough. It feels like the meat wasn't really there. Lena had hoped that her father's memory would have returned by now, since he could have had a way to deal with Doomsday, and we begin to get flashes of his memory returning, like he begins to remember working with Brainiac during the House of Brainiac story, and the connection allows him to remember something important on how to deal with Doomsday. And all he asks is for access to one of his old labs, but before he can do anything, Radiant smashes through the base and blasts Supergirl away to take Doomsday for himself. Luckily, Superman flies in after him and tries to talk down the villain, but he's too far gone and proclaims that they will now have no more peace as long as Doomsday survives. Doomsday, however, is teleported away, and his men begin the search for Doomsday in the city. So one thing this issue has been doing since it started is subtly focusing on Superman getting a bit more and more irate and angry, thanks to the Aftermath not wanting to see any reason and come to a agreement with Superman. And we know, thanks to his red K poisoning from Graft and Farm, when he gets mad, a red power is unleashed and he loses control, and Radiant blowing up the lab and attacking Metropolis begins to bring that out in the hero, as the rest of the family try and contain the Aftermath's army. The red K poisoning is a cool little handicap to put on the hero, who is usually so level-headed when it comes to fights, but it's an aspect I wish they had developed a little bit more, since it came back into the story just a few issues ago, and it felt like Williamson and his team kind of forgot about it because of, Absolute Power and some other issues that were happening in the book, and they just kind of remembered about it and like, oh yeah, we'll just write that back in after the fact. Like, we don't even know what will happen if Superman fully succumbs to it, or if he ends up dying from it because it's red kryptonite radiation. Does he end up transforming because red kryptonite actually mutates people? So does that mean he'll mutate? What will exactly happen to him? It's still very underdeveloped. And it also kind of feels like it's a little bit of an excuse to let Superman kind of off the chain, and we can do all these great action sequences. Now that Dan Mora is drawing the book, we get some really fantastic looking sequences, but it feels like it's just in service of that. Like, there's nothing really behind those action sequences. They're just there just to have them. Thanks to Superman's red K-induced rage, Lois finds him teaming with Doomsday to battle Radiant and the Aftermath soldiers. As the battle rages on, Jimmy Olsen arrives with Silver Banshee to cover the carnage for the Daily Planet, and upon seeing him, Radiant thinks it's time Superman paid the price for going against him and opens fire on Jimmy, claiming that his life will take Doomsday's place. Superwoman races to save Jimmy, but before she can, time soon slows down and Time Trapper appears before Lois, telling her that he told Clark about being able to prevent this if only he killed Time Trapper. But now, since he won't do that, Lois has that same choice. She is to kill Time Trapper and save not just her husband and Jimmy, but the world. Now, this is an interesting development for the Time Trapper story, since last we saw he was asking Superman to kill him and seemed pretty set on Clark being the one to do this thanks to their shared history, and probably the idea of getting Superman to break his rule and kill being kind of like the ultimate win over the hero. Doomsday has ultimately won over the hero. But now he's asking Lois, which makes me think that maybe the villain is a lot more desperate than he's letting on. Kind of makes sense as well, since we know that when he is killed, he will apparently become like a space-time god and have control over everything in the timeline, so I can see why he would want that. The way Williamson has been building that whole future stuff filled with horror for Superman has been great, and there's been great amount of tension to it. There's been a ramp up and it's flowed nicely between the issues, but I do hope the payoff is worth it, since it does seem a lot of the horror so far has just been Superman friends dying, and it was kind of implied that there was a lot more beyond that happening, and we haven't actually seen that yet. But I guess it's still building up to something, and I imagine we're going to see that in the next couple of issues. Superman issue 22 continued the Doomsday-centric action with more large-scale ties to the character's 90s adventures, specifically Hunter-Prey. There wasn't too many big plot points revealed this issue, but we were left with some really great little moments for Lex, Mercy, and Superwoman, who by the end of the issue is put in an interesting predicament by the villain Time Trapper, and I'm intrigued to see what Lois's take on this whole killing Doomsday, killing Time Trapper idea will be. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.